what is this hopium that we're experiencing now? I think a lot of us started to feel a lot better about the prospect of this election after Biden dropped out, and it became increasingly obvious that Kamala Harris is going to be the person running for president for the Dems, right? And there was a lot of speculation. We were speculating. Everybody's been speculating. Who's she going to pick as her running mate? Who do we think? You know, all these different names are getting thrown out, and I'm suddenly needing to learn about a bunch of state governors that I didn't previously know anything about. And it's finally landed. And I think a lot of us are much, much happier now. Like a lot of hope. I think previously I was feeling fairly pessimistic about how the election was going to go. I felt like it was a coin toss. It could go either way, or that Biden wasn't going to win. But now I'm feeling much, 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 much more hopeful. And that's because Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, is the running mate. And it seems like he's pretty cool. It seems like he's pretty nifty. So I kind of wanted to talk about him a little bit today, talk about his record. Why do we like him? And maybe like play some videos, seeing him speak, and just kind of get a sense of the vibes, because the vibes have changed dramatically. That's the thing here, is like the vibes have changed dramatically in a very short period of time in ways that I think most of us were not expecting. What is this? What is this feeling that we're having? So obviously Minnesota is a fairly progressive state, given that it is in middle America. We have previously talked about how they created trans sanctuary laws, protecting people who need to go there to escape persecution for being trans. They recently got rid of the trans panic defense, where you're like, oh my God, I murdered someone and you can't prosecute me because I did it because they were trans. You know, weird stuff. Very weird things. So I kind of wanted to just look at, okay, what has Tim Walz done? What are some things that we appreciate about him? What are some things that we like about him? Like, what's his background and everything? So he joined the National Guard at age 17, and he was in the National Guard for like 24 years. And then he worked as a teacher and football coach. While he was a football coach, he also sponsored the school's first gay-straight alliance meeting. And I've heard that he did that specifically because he knew that since he was the football coach, no one would mess with the kids in the GSA. So like, hardcore. We love him for that. That's good stuff. Like, he's been gay supporting since the 90s. So what are some of his other things that he's done? So he grew up in Nebraska. He moved to Minnesota in 1996, at which time he taught high school geography, and his football team won 2 state championships. He then ran for Congress, and he was in Congress. It doesn't say. I think he was in Congress, but I'm assuming he must have been in the House, like the House of Representatives, as opposed to the Senate. So then he ran for governor. During his first gubernatorial term, he worked with the Republicans to create bipartisan achievements, including putting a ton of money in roads and bridges, funds for opioid treatment and prevention, and a middle-income tax cut. I think that they've also recently expanded the child tax credit, which is awesome. Oh yeah, and like, by the way, it was not a popular move to support gay people in the 90s. We were still very much dealing with the whole stigma around AIDS and everything. Like, this was unpopular for him to do at the time. So very sweet. He won his second term as governor in 2022 by a 52% to 45% margin. At that time, Democrats also flipped the state Senate, which provided him with a unified Democratic control in the legislature. He therefore passed a law classifying abortion as a, quote, fundamental right. He also passed legislation that would basically aim to reduce carbon and go carbon-free energy completely by 2040 or 2050, something like that. There were a couple of different laws, I think, regarding climate protection. He also instituted paid family leave across the state and legalized recreational marijuana. I didn't know about that one. I forgot about that one. Or did I not know about it? Anyway, yes. And also signed an executive order safeguarding access to gender-affirming healthcare for transgender residents. So as far as his record, we're pretty pleased at the things that he's done and the issues that he's supported. Oh, wow. He was in the House as the first Democrat to hold that seat in over a century. Wow. So he represented as a Democrat in a previously red district, basically. The right is trying to get him for dropping out of the military after 24 years, right before his, right before Iraq war was declared. But I just saw, according to this, in fact, the thing that people are saying is, oh yeah, Tim Walz retired because he knew he was going to be deployed to Iraq. However, apparently, Tim submitted his retirement request to the U.S. Army National Guard months prior to notification that his unit would be deployed. His unit was fully staffed and his request was approved. He retired in May 2005. So that is apparently not true. Hi, I'm Alexander and this is Mitternacht. You should hit the like button and subscribe and check out the Patreon. And ooh, look at this hoodie I'm wearing. It's merch. Check it out. Links in the description. Thank you. Some people take issue with how he handled the whole George Floyd BLM protests because that was in Minnesota, right? And I will say that there are criticisms to be made there. And there are also questions as to what his like updated opinion is about Gaza, because I believe he made some statements right around like just after October 7 that, you know, he condemned Hamas, and I don't think he's really commented much on it since then. So, right, we can't claim that he's, you know, pro ceasefire or anything. That remains to be seen, to be determined. Yeah, 24 years is a long time to be in the National Guard. You would think that you have permission to retire at some point, right? One of the things that he also did was signed a bill providing free breakfast and lunch for school children. In a lot of places, it's means tested. You know, the school asks for proof of your, like, how much money your family makes. But he put in this law that provided free school lunch and breakfast for students regardless of their status. So this is where that picture that you may have seen is going around comes from. I love the fist bumps. I love that this starts with fist bumps. And then we go in for hugs. And then just absolute swarm. It's heartwarming. It really is heartwarming granddad energy. I think, you know, it's fair to say that, shut up, that we need a sense of normalcy. You know, I don't think Biden feels like a relatable human being. I'm not sure what it is about him. I feel like he's trying desperately to be a relatable human being, but he's not. And so, like, this is something that I do think is a benefit. You know, we were discussing the whole concept of calling conservatives weird earlier, and like, I think we just need something to feel a little bit normal, a little bit relatable. Like, this guy actually cares about people and actually wants good things for people. When the student protests happened recently about Palestine, he said that they needed to be listened to and taken seriously. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I appreciate that. It just seems like this is the closest to a candidate who actually represents our interests. And I'm like, I'm a leftist, like, I would say I'm much, much further left than the Democratic Party, right? And this is the closest I've felt to being represented. A guy who wants kids to have access to food so that they can actually learn. Because, spoiler alert, you don't learn when you're hungry. You know, like, you can't actually retain information and learn when you're hungry. So, yeah, wanting to provide for kids. It's good stuff. And another thing that he did for students, which now Republicans are trying to make fun of him for, they're calling him Tampon Tim. It was trending earlier. Hashtag Tampon Tim. The reason why is because he also either passed legislation or did an executive order. I can't remember which one it was, but he had this policy about providing free menstrual products to students in Minnesota public schools. I assume that's, you know, middle school and high school level making sure that students have access to these things. That's what's called, I think this is part of what's called the pink tax, that, or I guess that's more like certain products are just costing more because they're marketed to women. But it's really kind of shitty that people have to pay for tampons and pads when they don't have any control over that part of their body, you know? And sometimes these things are expensive. So yeah, this really shows that they have nothing. They're making fun of him for providing a necessary thing to students who might not otherwise have access to them. Yeah, it's the equivalent of making schools be required to have toilet paper. But I think that they're running with this because it associates him with femininity. It associates him with like a gross womanly thing that no one should have to hear about or something. It's super weird. But the fact that this is the kind of thing that they're criticizing him over, it shows that they don't have any substantive criticisms. Like they just have to make shit up, basically, or criticize things that are perfectly normal. My understanding is they're mainly mad because he put the tampons in men's bathrooms as well. Yeah, it's still deeply stupid. Like, yeah, guess what? Some men menstruate. They're called transgender men. Do you want a big, beardy trans man going into the women's restroom? I don't think so. I think you would rather they go into the men's room and then be able to access those things. Or what if a guy is getting some tampons for their girlfriend or whatever? Maybe she's having such bad cramps that she can't get up and walk, but she needs someone to bring her something. I don't know. Have you never put a tampon up your nose for a bloody nose? I mean, you can use tampons to like temporarily plug a gunshot wound, you know, like they are useful for other reasons. But anyway, another one of the things that he did is, yeah, so they passed like an abortion protection, and he supports the idea of a constitutional amendment to protect abortion rights. And this clip is relevant to that.
Now, look, we're pretty neighborly with Wisconsin. We get our friendly battles, but in Minnesota, just like in Wisconsin, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choices for ourselves, because we know there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. Mind your own damn business. Now, look, we're
so normal. What a normal dude. That's like, yeah, I love how he's just presenting everything he does as like, yeah, of course, my position is the obvious default position. Mind your goddamn business. He's great. He's great. Here's another one. I can't remember what this one is, so we're just going to watch it.
Who thought this was a real zinger when we were going at it. He said, Governor Walz is in the pocket of organized labor. And I said, that is a damn lie. I am the pocket.
Okay, that was the main thing. Like, because he was a union guy, you know? Like, that's the other thing, too, is like I'm assuming he was in the teachers' union. He's a union supporter. So for them to be like, he's in the pocket of organized labor, and he's like, bitch, I am the pocket. Like, oh, you think I'm being paid to support organized labor? No, bitch, I am organized labor. That's sexy. So Tim Walz is also like the only person running for one of these two offices who hasn't been in who didn't go to law school since like the 90s or something, maybe the 80s. Like Al Gore didn't graduate from law school, but he went to law school. It's like, how much of a relief is it to have a normal human person in one of these offices, like with someone who didn't go to law school, someone who isn't from a privileged background, who didn't like learn, like who basically didn't have to become a lawyer before entering politics. We need more of this. I love the concept of like, this is getting a little bit off track here, but I love the idea of having like a certain amount of types of citizens represented, you know, like if we had like a certain percentage of doctors who served for a period of time and we had working class people who serve a period of time, because this is the problem with like career politicians. This is the issue that people have, is that these folks often come from backgrounds that are not representative of most of the population. And they're people who don't have expertise in all these different things making decisions, right? Like a bunch of people who don't know anything about medicine making rules about who is allowed access to medicine. It's astounding to hear a Dem on the national level in the general election who isn't afraid of being called a socialist. Right, yeah, what is that? I want to see if I can find that clip. Okay, here it is. I found it.
And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. And for one thing,
I don't know why it's so small. I'm sorry. But he's like, one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. He's basically like, I am a people-focused candidate, and if you want to call me a socialist for that, that looks bad on you. Like, I'm just neighborly. I care about my neighbors. I care about my constituents. And yeah, like, functionally in this country, that is socialism. It's been so demonized. It's so insane that this is allegedly a Christian nation, and yet the concept of taking care of your neighbor is like foreign to most people. They'll call every Democrat a socialist. Exactly. It doesn't mean anything. Like, you might as well do the most far left thing you can do, because they're going to, even if you're like the most milquetoast centrist, they're still going to call you a communist. They've been calling Biden a communist this entire time. Oh, interesting. The first anarchist/communal orgs in America were Christian churches. Right. If Christians actually followed Christ, they would be socialists. Okay, let me see what else I have about Tim Walz. I'm not going to play the video on this one, but just look at how energized this is, in the sense that like there are a ton of people. This was Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, their venue in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, like just packed with people. Also, wear a goddamn respirator, you fucking morons. But, more importantly, to the point, I mean, not more importantly, but more to the point, this is like a lot of hype, a lot of energy, which is exactly what we needed. This is exactly what we were scared that we were not going to get with Biden. Now let's hit the meme. I think this is what any of you who've been on Twitter or on the internet today have seen this, and you're excited for us to talk about it. I'm not sure which venue this was, but jokes were made. And this is something that I want to see more of as well. I don't know, let's just get right on into it.
Debate the guy.
Hold on. He's talking about J.D. Vance and the concept of him possibly debating.
Can't wait to debate the guy.
He's like, let me finish. Let me finish my line.
That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
So if you haven't caught it, J.D. Vance apparently wrote in like the first version of his autobiography or memoir or something, he wrote basically that it is a rite of passage for any young man who is alienated from all the women in his life to have sex with a couch. So, whether you believe it or not, whether you believe it's true or not, it's a very, very popular meme right now that J.D. Vance is a weird guy who had sex with a couch. Apparently, you take like a rubber glove and you put it between the cushions and then you lube up the inside of the glove. Apparently, that's how it works. So, the state of American politics is so goddamn weird right now. And the look on his face, like he just made the best dad joke anyone's ever heard. Like I love too that like Kamala's face in this, she can see the teleprompter. She kind of starts reacting to the joke before he actually delivers it. But like, yeah, man, the state of American politics where like Trump is a literal child rapist. Like there are court documents talking about what what he did to a young, it's not even a Jane Doe. I think her actual name is in it. So yeah, Trump, child rapist, and JD Vance, couch fucker, that's who the Republicans have. Those are the weirdos that the Republicans have. And this apparently was Tim Walz's first speech. Like, this was part of how Kamala announced him as the running mate. And like, yeah, what a hell of a thing to do. Like, yeah, I can't wait to debate this couch fucking guy. So I'm not sure that I have much else on him, really. That was kind of the main stuff that I wanted to hit. That, you know, he seems like a normal human person, family guy. And I'm not saying that there aren't criticisms to be had of, you know, again, him and the way that he handled the George Floyd protests, or Kamala, right? Like, she was a top prosecutor, you know, and that's an issue. But like, compared to what we were almost certainly going to get, like, these people seem like they are at least on the side of the American people. They're on the side of democracy. They support trans people. Like, we should compare him to Josh Shapiro. Wow, what a terrible fucking name. The other final contender who sucked. I didn't hear much about him, except that apparently he wrote an article when he was in college about how Palestinians are like fundamentally incapable of basic human emotions or something. I don't know. I did see an excerpt that was allegedly from the first draft that got sent to the editors of his book. I can't confirm that that was a real. Speaking of JD Vance on the couch, Josh Shapiro. You have to say Joshua Shapiro, or it's just like, just not. It's not good. Joshua Shapiro compared student protesters to the KKK, and multiple education organizations came out against him for supporting vouchers. Ooh. Yeah, that like whole vouchers for private schools thing, when like tax dollars are diverted from public schools to help like already rich white families send their kids to private school that they should be paying for 100%. Cute. So yeah, compared to that, you know, we're getting a teacher who has worked with kids, who supported gay kids back in the 90s, and has generally seemed to make decisions that are good for actual human people. I think the point is, Vance's book is so unpopular that you could say anything is in there and folks will believe it because he's a weird guy and nobody read his book. Yeah, totally fair. Yep, and a football coach. So we can hope. I think that they are going to win at this point. Like, I just feel that there is a vanishingly small chance at Trump winning, which is vastly different compared to how I was feeling 2 months ago, when it seemed like Biden was probably not going to win and Trump was probably going to win. You know, I think we have a good chance. I'm feeling much better. I still think, by the way, that we are not going to do enough on the climate in a short enough period of time to prevent mass starvation, death, and water shortages, which are going to be imminent in the next 30 or so years, maybe 20 years. So it's not like we don't still have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, especially on the local level, to try to protect resources. There's a reason why I have I have a community garden right now. There's a reason why I'm moving away from Kansas. And it's not just that everything is shit politically. It's also because, you know, even with these wins, we are going to be facing opposition in a situation where we need like a dictatorial level of just fucking get rid of fossil fuels immediately. That is not going to happen, unfortunately. I know Trump is so mad that he can't run against Biden. He's doing conspiracy theories. He's pulling out old nicknames. It's very funny. Republicans are in denial that you can just choose not to run your old guy. Now Trump is the oldest candidate for president. He's a little bit younger than Biden, but now that Biden's dropped out, Trump is the oldest candidate for president in the history of this country, I believe. Also, yes, I agree. I'm still figuring, I've been assuming that no matter who wins, there's going to be civil unrest. And I think that if Kamala and Tim Walz win, then the fascists are going to do their coup thing and we're going to have January 6th to Electric Boogaloo. Like, I think that that's going to happen no matter what. But that's just to say that, you know, this is not the end of everything. Voting in 2 months, 3, Jesus, voting in 3 months is not the end of the story. We are going to have to do more to protect ourselves. Trump is old enough to be Harris and Walz's dad. God, yeah, he is. Jesus. January 6-2, Jan 6er is absolutely coming, right? I feel bad about laughing, but yeah. Voting blue in Texas this year. Yep. And I was not excited about voting for Biden. I was actually considering voting uncommitted if Biden was the one. And by God, I will vote for Kamala. Even though I don't really think that it's going to make a huge difference in Kansas, it would be a hell of a thing if we managed to flip Kansas purplish. Because when we recently voted to protect abortion rights, that was, you know, a majority. There are like 2.2 million voting age adults in Kansas, and there were about 900,000 who came out to vote for the abortion thing, and that was during August. Like that was during like the weird time where you don't normally vote. And about 547,000 of us voted to protect abortion. So we could potentially flip things, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm just saying that I'm more enthusiastic about it now than I was before. All you have to do is scare them that Kansas might flip and you suck away money they need elsewhere. Fair enough. I hope Biden's court reforms don't go out the door with him. Yeah, how amazing would it be if Biden was just like, by the way, I'm adding 2 Supreme Court justices. Fuck you! Right before he walks out the door. That would be hilarious. Thank you so much to all my patrons, but especially Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rovag, Jack, Amanda B., Michelle Frateroli, Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Danielle McDonald, DZXN, Elavi Nobody, Pastel Infinity, Suzanne Maynard, Nova, Desi Quiche, Celeste, Athiette, Jamie Jam, Sojo, Bean, Kevin Young, Mr. Atheist, Liam Hodgson, Elizabeth Bartell, and Jericho.